I walked in and saw my two kids sitting on the floor with paper plates, while my sister's children ate at the dining table with my parents. When I asked what was going on, my mom said, "They're used to leftovers." And my sister added, smirking, "They were born for crumbs," so I didn't argue. I just took my kids by the hand and walked out. "Hey, my name's Laura. I'm 38, a single mom of two, Jake 10 and Lily 7. It's been months since I last visited my parents' house. Between work, school runs, and bills, I barely have time to breathe. But when Mom called and said, 'It's been too long, come for the weekend,' I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd reconnect like the old days. So there I was, pulling into the long gravel driveway of the house I grew up in, the same house that still smelled faintly of lemon polish and Sunday roast. My kids were excited. Jake ran ahead, and Lily carried a handmade card for Grandma. When the front door opened, Mom was all smiles. "Laura, finally," she said, giving me a quick hug before crouching down to fawn over Brooke's kids, who had arrived earlier. And then there was Brooke, my younger sister, the golden child. Perfect hair, perfect marriage, perfect life, if her Instagram was to be believed. "Wow, you actually made it," she said, with that half smile that meant more than it sounded. I laughed it off. I'd learned to. Inside, the house buzzed with activity. Brooke's husband sat in the living room chatting with Dad, while Brooke showed off pictures of their latest family trip to Cabo. I joined in the small talk, trying to ignore how Mom's compliments flowed like honey toward Brooke's family. Her kids were so well-behaved, so bright, so good-looking. Mine? Well, Mom just gave them that polite smile she reserved for guests. At lunch, it was the same. Brooke's kids got served first, the best cuts of roast, extra gravy, while Jake and Lily waited patiently. Dad barely looked at them, focused instead on asking Brooke's husband about his promotion. I kept my tone light, complimenting the meal, making conversation, pretending not to notice the imbalance, because that's what I'd always done. Pretend. But that evening, something in me cracked. Dinner was supposed to be special. Mom had set the big dining table, the one with the good china. I went to the guest room to call my kids, but they weren't there. I found them in the living room, sitting on the floor, their plates made of paper, a few scraps of chicken and cold mashed potatoes between them. "Why are you eating here?" I asked softly. Jake looked up. Grandpa said the table was full. Before I could respond, Mom appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "They're fine, Laura. They're used to leftovers." And Brooke, my own sister, laughed. "Yeah," she added. "They were born for crumbs. I didn't say a word." I just stood there, the sound of my kids' quiet chewing breaking something deep inside me. That's when I decided this visit would be the last. That night, I lay awake in my old bedroom, the same one with the faded yellow wallpaper and creaky ceiling fan that used to hum me to sleep when I was a kid. But there was no comfort in it now. From the next room, I could hear my children whispering in the dark. Jake's small voice trying to sound brave. "It's okay. Mom probably didn't mean to forget us." And Lily's reply, soft as a sigh. "I'm not hungry anymore anyway." I pressed a hand to my chest, fighting the ache spreading through me. How do you explain to your children that love isn't supposed to feel like this? Memories began to blur together. Old, bitter flashes of a pattern I'd once excused. Dad at the dinner table years ago, clapping Brooke on the back for getting a C in math. "At least she's trying." Me, in the same seat, holding up a report card full of A's. Hearing him say, "Don't get cocky. Nobody likes a show-off." Mom standing in the kitchen whispering, "He doesn't mean it, Laura. It's just how your father is." But it wasn't just how he was. It was how I'd been trained to accept less. Less praise, less space, less love. And tonight, watching it repeat with my kids, that was my breaking point. I turned to look out the window. The house looked peaceful from the outside, the moonlight spilling over the yard where Brooke and I used to chase fireflies. Back then, I thought family meant forever. But now I saw it for what it really was. A hierarchy I never signed up for, one my children didn't deserve to inherit. Around midnight, I got up quietly and went to the kitchen. The leftovers were still on the counter, the real ones this time. I packed them into containers for Jake and Lily, warmed them in the microwave, and carried them back upstairs. They woke up when they smelled the food, sleepy and confused. "Mom?" Jake asked, blinking. Are we leaving? I smiled gently. Not yet, sweetheart. Eat first. We sat cross-legged on the bed, sharing warm food under the soft hum of the ceiling fan. I tried to keep my voice light, but my hands trembled as I helped Lily cut her chicken. She looked up at me and said, Grandpa doesn't like us very much, does he? I wanted to lie, to protect her, but the truth sat too heavy. So I said the only thing I could. Some people forget how to love the right way. That's not your fault. Lily nodded quietly, and Jake leaned against my arm. We stayed like that for a long while, 3 hearts trying to heal from something they didn't deserve. By morning, I knew what I had to do. No yelling. No crying, no scene. Just change. I got up early, made breakfast for the kids, and packed their bags before anyone else woke up. As I zipped the last suitcase, I looked around that familiar room one last time, the posters still on the wall. The framed family photos that told a story I no longer believed in. I wasn't just leaving my parents' house. I was leaving behind every part of me that had been taught to wait, for approval, for love, for leftovers. When Brooke came down, hair perfect, coffee cup in hand, she raised an eyebrow. Heading out already? Yeah, I said, calm and steady. We've had enough for one visit. She smirked, thinking she'd won again. But for the first time in my life, walking out that door didn't feel like defeat. It felt like freedom beginning to stir. The morning we left my parents' house, the sun was barely up. I remember glancing in the rearview mirror as we pulled out of the driveway, the porch light still on, the curtains still drawn. For years, that house had felt like the center of my world. But as it shrank in the distance, I realized it wasn't home anymore. Jake and Lily were quiet in the back seat, half asleep, their small faces peaceful after a night that had broken something inside me. I drove through the pale morning mist, tears blurring the road. I wasn't crying from sadness this time. It was release. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't trying to fix anyone. I was choosing us. Back home, our little rental felt smaller than ever. Cracked tiles, hand-me-down furniture, and that flickering kitchen light I kept promising to replace. But when I walked through the door, something shifted. This was where healing would start. I took a deep breath and said out loud, "We're home." The next few months were a blur of hard work and quiet victories. I picked up a second job at a local community center, bookkeeping during the day and tutoring kids in math in the evenings. The pay wasn't great, but the purpose filled something deeper than money could touch. At night, when I was too tired to move, I'd look over at Jake and Lily doing their homework at the kitchen table and feel that flicker of pride. Not the kind that needs to be seen, the kind that grows in the quiet. We started our own family dinners, every night, no matter how small the meal. Real plates, real laughter, sometimes just pasta and salad, but we ate together. I made sure my kids knew they'd never sit on the floor waiting for someone else's leftovers again. I found little ways to make our space feel new. Painted the kitchen cabinets a soft blue, hung up photos of the 3 of us, smiling, messy, free. One wall I turned into a thankful corner, where we'd write things that made us happy that week. Lily's note one evening nearly undid me. I'm thankful we eat together now. The calls started coming a few weeks later. First Mom, then Brooke, then Dad. I let them ring. Mom's voicemails always started the same, that soft, cautious tone she used when she knew she'd done wrong. Laura, your father didn't mean it the way it sounded. Then silence. Then, we missed the kids, but I couldn't go back. Not yet, maybe not ever. Every time the phone buzzed, I thought about that night. Jake's voice whispering in the dark. Lily trying to convince herself she wasn't hungry. And the anger returned, not wild or bitter, but sharp and clarifying. They had shown my children where they stood in their hearts, and I'd be damned if I ever let them stand there again. One evening, after work, I stood outside our small house and looked at the light glowing through the windows. I could hear laughter inside, Lily telling Jake some silly story, their giggles spilling out into the yard. For the first time in years, I felt something like peace. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And every meal we shared, every bedtime story, every little inside joke, it was all part of the life I was building. Not the one I was born into. The one I chose. It was a Sunday afternoon when the invitation came. A neatly embossed card in my mailbox, sealed with Brooke's usual dramatic flair. Join us for Brooke's 35th birthday dinner, family only. I stood there on my porch, reading the words over and over. For a moment, my stomach twisted with that old, familiar dread, the kind that comes from years of being the quiet one in a loud family. But then I looked through the window, saw Jake and Lily laughing at the table, surrounded by warmth we'd built ourselves, and I smiled. Family only, huh? Maybe it was time they saw what family really meant, so I said yes. The night of the dinner, I took my time getting ready. Nothing flashy, just a navy dress that made me feel strong, earrings my kids had saved up to buy me for Mother's Day, and a confidence that came from surviving what I once thought I couldn't. When we pulled into my parents' driveway, I saw the line of expensive cars parked along the curb. Brooke's friends, colleagues, her husband's golf buddies. The house looked the same, but it felt different now. Smaller, like the illusion had cracked. Mom greeted us first, her smile stiff, her eyes darting between me and the kids. You look... Well, she said. We are, I replied simply. Inside. Laughter filled the air, the clinking of champagne glasses, the endless hum of conversation about vacations and promotions and things that didn't matter. Brooke stood near the center of it all, radiant, polished, the perfect hostess. For a moment, she froze when she saw us, but quickly plastered on a smile. Laura, you made it! And you brought the kids! Her tone was sugar-dipped, but her eyes still carried that condescension she couldn't quite hide. Dinner was served buffet style, long tables covered in silver trays of food. The same setup as always. I caught my father's glance toward the children, and for a brief second, I wondered if history would repeat itself. It almost did. Brooke's son, her eldest, wrinkled his nose at Jake's shirt, a simple blue one we'd picked out together last week. Mom, didn't you say Jake's mom doesn't work in a real job? He asked loudly. The table went still. I saw Brooke's smirk, that tiny flash of satisfaction she couldn't hide fast enough. Jake looked down, his fork trembling, and that was it. I stood slowly, placed my hand gently on his shoulder, and met every pair of eyes around that table. My voice was calm, almost too calm. You were never born for crumbs, sweetheart, I said. You were born for greatness, Linz. Thick, heavy, suffocating silence, even my father, the man who'd once told my children to wait for leftovers, couldn't meet my eyes. Brooke's smile faltered. The entire room seemed to shrink, the air sucked out of their pretense and pride. I leaned down, kissed Jake's forehead, and added softly, "And you'll never have to earn your worth in a room like this." With that, I guided both kids up from their chairs. Lily took my hand without question. Jake straightened his shoulders. We walked out together, our footsteps echoing through that perfect, empty house. At the door, Mom called out my name, her voice breaking just a little. "Laura, please." I turned back, offered her a gentle smile, and said, "You raised me to be polite, Mom, but I had to teach myself dignity." Then I left. Outside, the night air was cool against my skin. I looked at my kids, their faces lit by the porch light, and I saw it clear as day. The strength, the love, the future I'd fought for, and for the first time, I didn't feel small walking away from that house. I felt taller than I'd ever been. If this story's got you hooked, don't forget to subscribe and hit that little bell, because what happens next might just change the way you see family forever. It's funny how peace doesn't arrive with fanfare. It doesn't crash through the door, waving banners or blowing horns. It just settles in, quietly, softly, like the scent of dinner cooking on a cold evening, or the sound of your children laughing from the next room. That's how life feels now. It's been almost a year since that night at my parents' house, the night I finally stood up and walked away for good. Since then, I've moved us into a small 2-bedroom home on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. The walls are a little scuffed, the backyard's mostly weeds, but it's ours. Every inch of it hums with love. The kids help me set the dinner table each evening. Jake insists on folding the napkins into restaurant triangles, and Lily lights the little candle in the center, pretending we're dining at some fancy bistro. But the truth is, we're not pretending. For us, this is luxury. Not because of the food, but because everyone here gets a seat. I still work 2 jobs, the community center during the day, tutoring at night, but it doesn't feel like struggle anymore. It feels like purpose. I even started a weekend program for single parents, helping them with budgeting, resumes, and childcare. Sometimes I catch myself speaking with a confidence I didn't know I had, and I realize this is who I was always meant to be. One evening, as we're setting the table, Jake looks up from arranging the forks and asks, "Mom, why don't we ever go to Grandma and Grandpa's anymore?" The question hits me like a small wave, gentle, but enough to stir the silt at the bottom. I sit down beside him, tucking a strand of hair behind his ear. "Because," I say softly, "sometimes people forget how to treat others right. And until they remember, it's okay to love them from far away." Lily frowns, her little hand smoothing out the tablecloth. "But they're still family, right?" "Yes," I nod. "They'll always be. But family isn't just who you're born to. It's who shows up, who listens, who shares the table." Jake thinks about it for a long moment, then grins. "Like us? Exactly like us," I say, smiling. Later that night, after the kids are asleep, I sit by the window with a cup of tea. The street outside is quiet, a few porch lights glowing, the faint sound of a neighbor's radio drifting through the air. I look around at the space we've built, framed photos on the walls, colorful school projects pinned to the fridge, a patched-up couch that's seen 100 movie nights. It's not perfect. But it's real. For years, I thought power looked like control, having the last word, proving my worth to people who refuse to see it. But now I understand true power is peace. It's not needing to be in the room where they judge you. It's choosing to build a better one, brick by brick, for the people who love you without condition. I get messages sometimes, Mom's texts, Brooke's calls. "Let's talk. Can we see the kids?" I always pause before replying. And most days I don't. Not out of spite, but because I'm not ready to reopen that door. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reunion. Sometimes it's just releasing the pain so it no longer controls you. A few weeks ago, I ran into Brooke at the grocery store. She looked different, tired, older, less sure of herself. Her cart was nearly empty. Her voice trembled when she said my name. "Laura, you look good." "The kids, they're beautiful." I thanked her, and that was all. No resentment, no sarcasm, no hidden jabs. Just a small exchange between two women who'd finally learned their lessons, hers about humility, mine about freedom. When I got home that evening, Lily was waiting at the door, arms crossed in her best imitation of authority. "You're late," she teased. "Dinner's ready." She led me into the kitchen where Jake had set the table again, this time with paper flowers in a cup. "It's fancy," he said proudly. I laughed, feeling something warm rise in my chest. I sat down between them, letting the noise and the love and the clatter of forks drown out every old echo of what used to hurt. Halfway through dinner, I looked at them and said quietly, "You know what? No one decides your worth by the seat you're given, only by how you hold your head when you stand." Jake tilted his head, thinking. "Is that like one of those mom quotes?" I smiled. "Something like that." They laughed, rolling their eyes in that way kids do when they don't quite understand yet, but one day will. After dinner, when the dishes were done and the lights were dimmed, I stood by the doorway and watched them drift off to bed. Lily's stuffed bear tucked under her arm, Jake's nightlight glowing softly, and in that quiet, I felt something settle inside me, something I'd been chasing all my life. Not revenge, not validation, just peace. I used to think walking away meant weakness. Now I know, sometimes it's the strongest thing a mother can do. Fade out,